All right, we're just gonna click the go live button and see what happens. Let's see, YouTube, what are you doing? Going live, and it says you're live. So, welcome everyone. YouTube has just updated their live streaming thing, so hopefully we will work out what is going on. But today I am doing the editing your pictures live version because a while ago I posted on my channel this video that says send me your photos, and quite a bit of you sent me your photos, and we'll be going through there. But I'm really curious actually to see what this new YouTube live system is like. So far it looks pretty good. What's up, everyone? So you'll have to let me know, oh, that was a typo, if it all works good. If it does, then I will continue the YouTube live system like this. And if you guys don't know, this is what it looks like now. Let me switch over to the live stream. It's like this kind of simple design, elegant, but I can't really see what's going on, so we're just gonna go with it. And the goal of this video is to go through all of the pictures that y'all sent me and basically edit them and create a preset pack out of it. So yeah, let's have some fun. And I'm actually gonna shrink this guy down quite a bit because you don't need to see my face that big. And let's get started. If you have any questions, just hit me up in the chat. Thank you. The setup is dope. I appreciate that. But let's get started. So I just imported all the pictures, and right now we have a ton. Let me increase size. So thank you everyone who submitted your pictures. If you're curious how you can submit your pictures for future videos, I'm going to be doing something similar to this for the next round, but I haven't decided how I want to do that. So what I'm going to do is go through all of these pictures and kind of pick ones that I think would be good for editing, and then I'm going to ideally make 10 presets for Instagram or .cube files so you can import them and use them in your videos and pictures as well for free. Also, let me know about the audio. The audio should be good. If anything needs to be adjusted, just let me know. Thank you for the quality update, Grovacy. Quality is damn good. Well, that is awesome. That's what we're trying to here to do. I have the GH5 connected up, and then I have a lav right here for the audio, which I can adjust and make cool sound effects, but I probably will never use. So let's get started by picking our first image. Let's just look through here. All right, shirtless dude. All right, so this one's pretty dope. You can pretty much do anything you want. So yeah, let's go to the develop and then start creating our own presets. So with these, I'm going to kind of be playing around and making them however I want. So first things first, what I typically do is look at the image and then start to think of a theme that I want. And from this image, I'm getting a really dark vibe. So right away, I'm going to start adjust the exposure and contrast and all that stuff over on the right hand side. So let's see. I'm going to move my face cam over to the left side, and let me know if that's good for you guys. So what I'm going to do is start to decrease the contrast a little bit to get a more moody vibe. And I know I'm pushing my histogram over to the left side. You can decrease your contrast by dragging the histogram around like this, or you can use your sliders. Sometimes I use both. And then from here, I want to decrease my highlights to get more detail. As you can see, like up in here, I want to get a little bit more detail in that area. Not a lot though. And then keep looking at the image. Let's decrease the shadows a little bit more. And I want to add a little bit more contrast into our image. So I think about like 30 contrast looks pretty decent. And then from here, you can manipulate your whites. Sometimes I'll boost up my whites, and then I'll decrease my blacks if I want more contrast. And then from here, I like what this is looking like. Let's go down to clarity. Increase that clarity to get a little bit more poppy feel. I don't like to use too much clarity because if you use a lot of clarity, then your image can be very, I don't know, very sharpened, and it doesn't really look that good. Dehaze is something that I've been playing around with for a while, and it basically is like a contrast, and it's weird. I don't really know what it does, but it basically, if you have a hazy image, if you drag it to the right, it'll make it more contrasty and kind of bring back your image. Cool, so now we have this. I'm going to decrease the saturation just a little bit, and then I am done with my overall corrections. So you can hit this button down here to see your before and after, and so far it's not much that's being changed. So moving on, I like to go to my tone curves, and this is when I will play with different areas. And for now, I'm just going to hit a point in the middle and then a point down here in the bottom and drag that down a little bit and then drag my top up a tiny bit. This will give me a little bit more saturation. And sometimes, depending on the image, I'll drag this middle one up to increase the overall exposure. So Sub Dynamic said difference between clarity and sharpness. So if you look real quick, let's pull up clarity. So clarity basically is a contrast. It adds contrast, and imagine like there's an Instagram filter like structure or something that's called. Like when you drag it to the right, it basically adds contrast into all of the areas that it's sharpening. So if you watch real quick, if I bump up the clarity, it's adding contrast while sharpening. So clarity is for that more punchy look, and then sharpening is for that overall adding the grain into it to sharpen the image. So that's a little bit of a difference. Awesome. I'll try to keep going back and forth with the comments, but to make this about an hour long, I'm going to try to stick to editing as much as possible. And then this is where the fun thing happens in Lightroom. Under the HSL Color tab, you have a lot of options. And this is my favorite thing about Lightroom, is to basically manipulate this as we like. So from here, sorry, I'm just adjusting something a little bit. You can click on this button next to hue, and anything you click on, you can click and drag around up and down, and it'll decrease or increase the hue for that selected area. So for example, if we click in the back and then select hue and find one of these greens, we can adjust the look of those greens. So I'm going to drag those down so it's a more little yellow hue. And then I'm going to grab the saturation thing, hit this button right here, and also desaturate those a little bit because I don't want them popping at all. And then I'm going to go back out. So now I like the overall look of this, but I want to create some mood. So we're going to grab the luminance and start playing around with different colors. I want this ground to be more poppy, so I'm going to drag the luminance up a little bit so it pops out a little bit. And let's pop the white up a little bit on him, and then let's make this dark area. Let's see what dragging this around does. I don't like that. So once you get something where you like with all of your color changing around, your hues, your saturations, then your image is almost complete. There's a few other things that I like to do, and that's one of them, split toning. So if you don't know, split toning is an area that you can add color to your highlights and your shadows. For example, if I just drag the saturation all the way up and then I change my highlight split toning all around, you can get some really interesting vibes. So I'm kind of getting a light teal to green vibe from this. So I'm going to drag this down to here. I think somewhere around here looks good. Light, like the blue will give it more cool look, and then the green will give it more of a moody look. So I'm going to drag that right there, and then for example, I'm also going to play around with the shadows. Let's see. Ooh, I like where this is going. So something like this in here, that looks good. And then so I have a green highlight and then a blue shadow, and then you can also mess with your balance. So once you get that done, I'll typically mess with my balance until I get something I like. Let's see. That looks good. And then I'm also going to play around with your saturation on both, because you don't want it to be overly saturated in any color. Otherwise the image just doesn't pop as much. And this is where you'll start to see like the huge difference between our before and after pictures, as you can see. So I like where this is going. And then the only other thing that I'll do is I'll probably add a little bit of sharpening. I'm going to decrease that to 20. And let's see, lens correction. You can also do any transforms if you want, like you can constrain the crop. And this is how you get some really dynamic images. I typically don't play around with that as much. There's vignette, and then there's also color calibration if you want to change your colors around. So from a first glance, I think I like this. I may just go back in a little bit and then start changing some of the hue and saturations. But for my first image, I think I like this. So in order to save this as a preset or something that you can save for later, or for this example, my image, let's see. Ooh, I like what this is doing. Cool. All right, I like this a lot. Let me adjust one more thing. Awesome. So in order to save this, all you have to do is over here on presets, hit this plus sign and then hit create preset. So this little dialog box will pop up and then I can name it to a group. So this is, I'm gonna, let's see, editing. What's the group name like? What am I naming this? YouTube, I don't know. KH edit. Someone help me find a group name for this, like editing your pictures pack or KH free pack one, something, while I read some comments. All right, let's see. Someone said, this picture looks, yes, it does. Do you also struggle with adjustments to be a rounded number? Example, contrast 30. I used to, Wakar, and then I changed my like mentality. I just didn't really care too much. Because sometimes the image needs a little bit and then a little bit less. I know it depends on personal choices, but I would like to have the same black and white color as before. But I would like to have the same black and white color as before in this image. Yeah, no, totally personal preference for everything. So that's why I'm just including this pack for free. And this is kind of like to see how everyone else edits. So I'm going to say KH YouTube pack. KH free preset. All right, so this one, I'm going to name these presets by the name that they are under. So this one is Raphael. Let me see, Raphael Beekman. Thank you for sending that in. All you have to do is select all of these effects that you want to bring in. So like the haze, let's see, what else did we do? None of that. And then click create. So now we have our KH free preset pack and Raphael Beekman is the first picture that we decided to edit. Cool. So let's go on and move to another image. I'm just going to scroll through here and pick one that I like. So let's see. We have some trees, a phone one. Oh, this would be cool. This is kind of white. Let's see. I want something that's like really punchy. All right, cool. Let's do this one right here from Alice Zhang. If I say your names wrong, I am so sorry. But we're going to get on with this one. So from here, this is overall, it's already like a really vibrant, like bright image. On as far as like exposure, as you can see, it's pushed up towards the right side. So we're going to get started and play around with what we want. Sometimes I'll click auto and then see what the computer does. And you can do this quite a bit to see that, okay, there's some detail that it's trying to bring back in the hair, for example. But I like to do everything manually. So first, let's start playing with some vibes. I want this to be a very cool vibe since it looks like it's cold there. So I'm going to drag that temperature down. Let's change the tint to the right a little bit to get a little bit more magenta in there. And then I'm going to decrease the contrast because I want this one to be like a faded look. So let's drag that down. All right. And then let's drag our highlights. Let's see what we're dealing with. Since this is a JPEG, we won't be able to do as much with this. Let's drag our highlights up and then our shadows. Let's drag those up a tiny bit. And then my whites, I'm going to bump those up as well because I want this to be really like bright and in your face. So we're not going to mess too much with the clarity this time because we want it to be a softer look. For example, this clarity, bumping it all up, bumping all the way down. But I am going to mess with the dehaze a little bit because I want it to be a more faded look. So I'm going to drag that to the left a tiny bit. All right. And then Wakar said, can you explain the difference between HSL slider toning and the camera calibration tones? Yeah, we'll get down to that in a little bit. What's up, Base of Nations? But all right, let's move down here. I'm going to decrease the vibrance because I want this to be very faded as well. I said that a lot, but so one thing I like to do every now and then is sometimes I'll decrease the vibrance and bump up the saturation, and other times I'll decrease the saturation and bump up the vibrance. The one thing to note is that your vibrance controls all of your cool tones, and your saturation adjusts all of your bright tones. It's kind of hard to understand, but once you do, you can kind of create your own custom look. All right, so from here, I want my look to be faded. So if you're on a tone curve, if you want it to be faded, you drag up your bottom left and you'll see that it adds like a faded tone. Anytime you make this faded, you will lose detail in like everywhere. It just kind of doesn't make it as contrasty. So you can come back in and add in more like dehaze or something like a clarity just to get more contrast in there. But I kind of like where this is going. And just to look up before and after to see what we're doing. Obviously this is a little bit more, the top one's a little bit more natural, like the before is a little bit more natural tone, and the right one is a little bit more of an artistic style. All right, so coming through here, let's drag this down a little bit to get more of that dark tones. All right, I like that. All right, let's pump that up a little bit. And then I'm going to bring my highlights down a little bit because I want to, if you bring your highlights down at the very top, it will also make this top area faded, as you can see right here. So it's fading out that high tone. So I kind of just want to crush. If you look up at our histogram, we're literally crushing the upper half. So the upper 40 is getting nothing. So that's how you get this really unique faded look. All right, so we're moving down. So this is where I'm going to explain the difference between the HSL Color tab and the Color Calibration tab. So this Calibration tab, it will basically manipulate how your colors are being adjusted. And it's really confusing. But so for example, if we go to the green primary, you can see that our yellows, this is basically calibrating your colors. So whenever you adjust, for example, your HSL in your area, for example, if I drag my green to the far, or let's try to find a yellow. If I drag my yellow to the far left, you'll see that it is orange. But if I don't want it to be orange and I want it to be another color, you can come down here to the Color Calibration tab and start manipulating with your calibration. So you can change what the hue does. So it's kind of like it's in like an added HSL area, but it gets so confusing, and I don't recommend playing around with this until you want to get a little bit confused. So I typically only play around with that at the end if I want to add some artistic flair to my images. But that's one way of calibrating your HSL area, if that made sense. It's kind of confusing. Ion says, loved it, Kyler. This type of live episode is really interesting. Thank you for sticking around. I think these are fun. I was going to make this like a video, but if you haven't noticed, I haven't been able to make videos all the time because I'm swamped. So I'm hoping that you guys will just ask questions. We can talk about it and then kind of see what's going on. So let me know the quality, all that stuff, and I will try to make it the best as possible. So from our picture right here, I'm looking at it and our oranges are a little bit odd. Oh, that's why, because I just changed the yellow. So like this. But I'm going to decrease the saturation of that yellow a little bit. And I want to change the yellows to a little bit more orange tone. And then I like to come in here and just click and drag around with my saturation to see what is going on. So I'm going to decrease the saturation of that blue. And let's decrease the luminance as well and see what happens. Actually, I want to increase the luminance. All right. And then from here, let's see what dragging some of the hues around does. If I click on her shirt, okay, so that adds a little bit more purple or blue into there. If I drag on the sky, we can add like a green tone, or we can go all the way up and add a purple tone. So I want this to be a little bit more neutral. And then from here, we're gonna go back into that split toning and play around again. So the one thing the split toning does is you'll notice there's a saturation slider and a hue slider. If you click on this little X or this little box next to there, you'll see that all around here we can drag. These are all different hues, and then your saturation is controlled by how far up you are. So sometimes I'll just kind of like go towards the top and drag around to see what kind of vibe I want. For example, if you wanted to go like a little sepia tone, which I kind of like actually, let's go right around there. And then go to our shadows and see what's going on. Where's our shadows in the image? So let's do a sepia with a little, let's see, what color do I want? And this is the best thing about Lightroom is you can constantly play around with different looks and feels to your image. So let's go to like that blue tone. And then from here, I will change the balance because sometimes you'll get a different color if you want to play between the two. So I think a little bit more towards the right gives me a little bit more of a yellow tone throughout the entire image. But let's see. I don't know if I like the yellow tone actually. So let's go a little bit more towards the left to get that blue tone. And I actually want to go back up to my HSL area and change my yellow saturation down, because I just want to kind of like remove those a little bit. Go from there. And then overall, I'm going to actually decrease my exposure a tiny bit. And then I'm going to come back here and add some warmth in the top. Add a little bit more contrast. And then I think I may be done with this image. The next image I'm going to do is going to be black and white. Philip, you can send me your pictures. There's a video on my channel a while ago that said editing your pictures. That should be still open, but I think I'm going to be creating something new. This is just for that submission. If you look on this video right here, there's a editing your photo submission, and there's a submission link in the bottom. Just look up this video on my channel. All right, so I like where this is going. Let's see, any last minute adjustments, hues. I think this is good. So we're gonna do the same thing, create a preset. And this one is going to be called Alice Zhang. Cage-free preset, got all the stuff in there, and create. So for the next one, I'm going to show you a little bit more of a dynamic preset where we're going to start adding some radial filters and all that other fun stuff. But I need to find an image that would probably work best with that. So for example, something like this, where it's kind of unique, it's a little bit artistic. We're just going to play around with this. So I may make this one black and white. So let's do black and white. And let's start off by changing some of the contrast around. So typically with black and white, I want to decrease my highlights a little bit to get more dynamic range, and then increase my shadows. And then I'll start manipulating the contrast, and I'll typically dehaze it to the right to add more contrast, and then add some clarity to make it pop. So that overall just kind of made the image pop a little bit more. And then from here, I'm going to increase the whites and decrease the blacks. But you don't want to decrease the blacks too much, because as you can see, our blacks are already to the left. Excuse me. So a little bit. And then from here, we're going to look at this tool right here, which is a radial filter. The radial filter basically means that if you click and drag it, it will create a radial filter to your set parameter. So if you drag it all the way to the left, you'll see that anything that is outside the radial filter is going to be decreased, like is going to be your settings over here. And for example, you can do the exact opposite. So you can get some really interesting looks really quickly with your radial filter. And you can control the feather. If you want it to be a sharp, sharp, you can drag it all the way to the left. So you'll see that anywhere it goes, it has like a spotlight look. Or you can also have it so it feathers out. So it's kind of like less intense. So I'm going to drag this down a little bit. And this is going to be kind of like a highlighting area. And on these radial filters, you can kind of adjust them as you want to get a certain look. So let's go like that. Decrease the contrast. Just like that, and boom, I like that radial filter. So now we can start to manipulate our overall image, and anytime we need to, we can jump back in here and adjust our radial filter as needed. It's almost like a way to create a vignette as well if you want to. So from here, I want to bump up my clarity quite a bit, and then I'll mess around with my tone curve. And since this is black and white, there's not really much you have to do. You can add a faded look if you increase your lower curve, or you can keep it the same. So for black and white pictures, I typically don't adjust any of these as much, because it's on a per picture basis on what like needs to be changed. So again, you'll have to play around with the certain looks, but I like where that is going. And then again, you can play with your tones if you want to get some colors in there, which is really interesting to play around with, because on a black and white image, you can get some really artistic looks if you just play around with a tiny bit. And see, like we're already getting like a crazy image. Like I have no idea what this is just by playing around with your split toning. So I'm gonna drag the saturations of those to all the way 0, because we don't need that for this picture. And then let's come down here. Anything else that we need to adjust? Nope. So this is a black and white one with a radial filter. So you can adjust that as needed. And all you have to do is create a preset and I'm gonna name this one, who made this, Alame Brew. That's black. Include the radial filter, create. So we already have 3 that we have made. Let's go on to another image. So again, thank you to everyone who has submitted pictures. All of these are awesome. I think this one's pretty dope. Just let me know if you want me to edit one in here. But all right, everyone else says, check out my Instagram, DP Imaging. Thank you for sharing that. I'll be sure to check it out when I can. What's the best camera for a beginner from Med L? It just kind of depends. The best camera is the one in your hand. If you have a cell phone, I would highly recommend shooting stuff on there and then seeing what you like. David said it looks clear for me now. Philip said, all right, thank you. David, thank you for liking the faded look on that picture. Karen says, I need to use split toning more often. Totally agree. Split toning is such a powerful tool. So we're going to scroll through here and then just kind of pick a picture. Ooh, this would be a fun one because there's a lot of lights going on. We have some stuff going on, and we can get some very interesting looks with this. Kind of like the, I don't know what his name is, but he does all the pictures with these lights. So let's go to the Develop tab and see what we can do. Sometimes I like to jump around to my hue sliders and just start sliding these around to see what can happen. I'm going to slide those yellows to the left. I'm going to give it more of a red, like a red tone. So slide these around. And honestly, the hue and saturation sliders are something that I just typically always drag around whenever I want to. So I kind of want to give it a overlay feel, and this is where the split toning is going to come into play. So our highlights, we can actually change the look of all of our lights if we need to. So let's see that magenta, and then go into our shadows. And I want our shadows to kind of neutral all of our skin tones. There we go. And let's play around with the slider to the right. All right. Let's decrease our shadow or our saturation. And then from here, sometimes when you want a picture, you'll have to manipulate quite a bit of it to get the look that you want. And then there's other times where when I'm editing, I will actually have to add other colors, because in Lightroom, you can't really get like 4 quadrant colors. For example, if I want to add some blue, I can paint an area. Let me make sure I have the right area. You can paint an area, but on this brush, you can't add like color to it, which is kind of a little bit frustrating when you are trying to create those more artistic looks. So for this one, I'm going to show you a tool that is called just like a graduated filter. And this allows you to do the exact same thing as the radial filter, only adjust it for a certain side. So this is the same thing as a radial filter, only it basically drags along the right. So I'm going to drag that from left to right and see what that looks like. But I'm also going to drag it from up to down and just see which one I like the best. I think I actually like that from left to right. So from here, we can start to add our own colors. And then you can do a couple of these in different areas if you want to create a multicolored picture of essence in any sort. So it's fun to play around with these because you can get a really interesting look. Like if you want to go a light to dark look, you could do that as well. But I think I'm only going to stick around to, oh, I deleted the wrong one. Stick around to 1 because I like that look. And let's see, do I want to increase the contrast a little bit more? Oh, I have to click on it first. There we go. Bump that up. Yeah, Brandon. Yeah, Brandon Wolfel. I want to do a video on his effects sometime soon because he has a really interesting look. If you just look at, let me pull up his Instagram. He has a style, and when you have something like that, you kind of get a look that is known as yours. Like all of his pictures have, what's the ones more specifically I'm thinking about? It's kind of like this one with the lights and stuff, all of his lights are different colors. So that's something that he manipulates with, and he always shoots with that certain area where you can have all those lights to play around with. Because I would say he's known for his lights, like all of his pictures with his lights and the really contrasty neon look. So yeah, that is the guy I was referring to earlier. So yeah, we're going to keep moving on with this. We don't need any of these crop tools. Move down. So now we can start adjusting our parameters around. Honestly, in Lightroom, everyone always asks, like, how do you edit pictures? Like, what's the thing? I honestly click and drag, slide around until you get something that you think you like. Again, I would not use clarity on a picture like this. I would use a little bit of contrast or maybe dehazing. Dehazing, honestly, kind of gives you similar to that Brandon look with just a slider, but it'll basically punch in all of your colors and make them more, all of your colors more, let's see, contrasty, but also less faded. So you can see in our background right here, all of these images, all these colors are kind of faded, but if we drag our dehazer to the right, you'll see that it brings out those individual colors a little bit more. So overall, I think I'm going to drag that dehaze down a little bit to get a little bit more contrast in here, and now we're starting to get somewhere that I like. So again, I'm going to drag my vibrance again, controls all the blues. So you see in that background, my vibrance is going up, and my saturation controls all the rest. So I'm going to drag my saturation up and my vibrance down a tiny bit. Okay, I like that. And then let's play with our tone curve. A tone curve, as you guys know, slides around. You can manipulate all of your areas around your image and see what's going on. For this one, I just want to decrease my shadows a little bit and then increase my highlights a little bit. I don't like the look of that, actually. So let's decrease the shadows down here. What's up? Hi. All right. Let's keep moving on and start playing around with our saturations. So Wakar said, damn, I didn't know about that. Well, hopefully you learned. And Wakar said, can you edit a picture and really punch those skin tones even after adding the hues and saturation? So yeah, skin tones for me have always kind of been preference on what you want. So typically when I'm wanting to adjust my skin tones after I'm done with my picture, I'll go around here in the hue sliders and play around with that and figure out like what is the best skin tone to look for an image. But the problem that you run into is when you're adjusting your skin tones with these is that it manipulates your entire image. So what I'll do is this brush tool right here, I will just brush an area once I decrease my brush size. I will brush onto the skin tones. And when you're brushing, you can add this tool to kind of like see where you're brushing at, if it'll show it. Why is it not showing me where I'm brushing? Well, typically you just add a color and then it kind of shows you where you're brushing, but I guess it's not today. Maybe not. And then, oh, because that's my flows all the way down. There we go. So we can see where we're brushing in now. And then this is what I'll use to adjust my skin tone. So now that we have our skin kind of brushed a little bit, even with the glasses, we can just paint all this area. So I can use this now to adjust my skin tones. I'm going to, you can either add some color in there, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just punch in here and then mess with my temperature and tint, because that is typically how you get your skin tones. So now my skin tone is getting to where I want it. You can go a little bit like cooler, you can do anything with you want, but skin tone is kind of preference for your image. So that's what I'll typically recommend with skin tone after the fact, is when you are playing with it, you just need to be in mind that you will have to do something like this later on. But again, skin tone is one of the hardest things to master and make look good. It is very hard to do. So let's bump up her face a little bit since she's in a lit area. I like that. Increase a little bit more warmth. and that looks good for me. So yeah. All right, in my opinion, Lightroom is a bit limiting if you want to get multicolored look. Yes, so that I want for a multicolored look, for example, if you wanted something that is like blue from this side, you know what I mean? Like you can do brushes. So like I just showed earlier, brushes with colors. So if I wanted to make a red area, I can paint this red over there. I'm just gonna increase my flow. And then if I wanted blue, red over there, and then I can make a new brush, and then I wanted green over here, you can make a new brush, and then if I wanted, let's see, dark blue on the bottom, you could do something like that. So it is kind of limiting, but I would probably use Photoshop just because of the layer panels, because trying to find what color you painted, all that other stuff, it gets very complicated when it comes down to figuring all that stuff, because you have to find these little nodes and then delete them. Like for example, I accidentally just deleted my skin tone node, and that's why I don't like using Lightroom for multicolored stuff, but on the fly it's pretty quick. But you can use multicolored stuff. For example, if I wanted to make this blues more punchy, I can paint in some blue, and then you can also manipulate what that blue is doing. So I'm actually going to use some of that because I like what it's looking like. All right, so moving forward, let's see, I want to decrease this a little bit to the left. Like what that's looking. I feel like we got a lot of color over here, but nothing over here. So I'm going to add another brush, and let's see what color I want. Let's add green. And then the cool thing about this brush thing is you can just kind of click through here and see what you want. And again, you don't even need anything. So maybe I just don't want anything. So I'm gonna click that brush again, find that node wherever it is, and delete it. It gets pretty hard to do when you have a lot of nodes. So moving forward, let's go down our image and, like always, play around with our saturation sliders, stuff like that, and see if we want anything. I'm going to decrease the red and then play around with my split toning a little bit more. That looks good. A little bit less sharpening, more radius. Do I want to adjust any of the calibrations? So these are like after the fact, like you can change it to right. I think my skin tones look better if I change my tint to the left, as you just saw right there. That looks good. Let's see our reds. This is how you can get some different skin tones. So I like dragging my red to the right. As you can see, this is really evident in the lips. So look at our lips and our skin, how they're not really matching. You can kind of make those reds blend together. So if I drag this to the right, you'll see that everything kind of becomes a little bit more orange. And if you drag it to the left, it kind of makes them a little bit more different, like towards the magenta area. So this is all user preference. I'm gonna drag it to the right and then decrease the decrease a tiny bit, and then do the same for my greens, because my greens will affect the background area. If I drag it to the left, we get this interesting look. The right, we get that more punchy look. I'm gonna drag to the left a tiny bit, and then our blues, this is where we get some weird colors going on, because most of our color science is in the blue and reds. If I drag this to the left, we're gonna get a really punchy red look. So I'm gonna find a happy medium, because I like where this is looking towards the left, and then just bump up that saturation a little bit, so our blues in here get punchy. So as you can see, our before image and after image is starting to look somewhere really interesting. Like look, we created blue from nothing over here. Now I don't even remember what the beginning picture looked like. So I'm gonna go up here in the beginning and do one more round of contrast, because I think this could use a little bit more contrast. Not a lot though, but whenever you add contrast, I like to add a little bit more detail in my shadows. So maybe add more dehaze. Awesome. So I like the look of this. It is very contrasty, and it looks very different from our first image. We added some blue up here and that stuff. So I really like this one. So now I'm going to save this as a preset. First, decrease some contrast a little bit, and name this whoever the name who sent in the picture. So this one is Peter Vasquez. Peter Vasquez, create. Make sure we have all the stuff. Calibration, we have that. Anything else? Noise reduction, we don't do any of that. Create. So, all right, let me read some comments. Jen, you can submit a picture by looking up editing your pictures on my YouTube channel. There's a video like a couple videos back, and I said send me your pictures. Mimont, or Mini Tom says, hi, I like the stream. Thank you for sticking around. We're going to keep moving on. And then by the end of this stream, I'm going to be posting in the comments or something, or I'll release it in a new video, the free preset pack once this is done. So at the end, stick around because I'm going to be releasing this to you guys. All right, and it's cool. We can also start to see our presets that we've already made. So this is the Alice Zhang one. This one is the Guillaume Brew, Peter Vesquez, and then that's Raphael Beekman. All right, so let's pick another picture and then go from here. I did really like this one, but I'm just trying to think what I would do with it. At first glance, it's a dope picture, but it is very flat already. There's not a lot of color, so this would be like one of those ones where it's like clarity, contrast, that type of stuff. So I don't know if I'm really gonna use this picture. So let's keep going through here. Ooh, we have a nice camel, some cityscape. Okay, so here's a cool one. Let's play around with this one. This one's next. Blowery said too much change on this one. Are you referring to the one that we just did? This one? Develop tab. So this is the one that we just did. That was the before, and this is an after. It's kind of a it's an artsy look. Like, I'm just doing this just because I like the look of it. Of course, I love the original as well, but it's fun to play around with, like, giving these colors different hues and tones, especially like up here in the blue, like adding blue to something that's not actually there, because then you get a little bit more of a blue into a pink rather than a faded color into a brown. So it's just a more artistic style. You can keep playing around with whatever you want though. So where is the picture that I was going to do? Is this one right here? Yeah, no, I totally, everyone has their own style or whatever, like you can play around with. So for this one, I'm going to basically change the color of the sky. So what I'll do is come down here and go to the HSL area once I can find it. And then I'll click this button, and then I'll pick somewhere in the sky and start changing the color of the sky. You notice it's also changing the color of the jeans, so that's something we'll have to keep in mind. So I'll typically change the sky to like a lighter teal, and then I'll either decrease the saturation or increase the saturation based on what I want. For this one, I'm going to decrease the saturation so it's a little bit more of a faded sky, and then I'm going to come down here to the hue and change this yellow on this area. I want it to be a little bit more magenta, and then I'm also going to decrease the saturation as well. For cityscapes like this, I don't really do too much, but I do add a little bit more clarity to my images because it makes the buildings pop a tiny bit more. And then sometimes I'll add a little bit dehaze, but not a lot. So right now in our face, we're kind of like crunching this because it's a JPEG. So already the only thing that we did was change the color of the sky and added this faded look. So honestly, for an image like this, that would be all that I would want to do. You can manipulate your highlights and shadows, but for this one, I'm going to decrease the highlights and punch up the whites to make that building pop a little bit more in this image. And then let's see with our blacks, what do we want to do? Decrease the blacks a little bit. You could also do something like that filter that we did earlier, but add no color on it and then just add the brightness. So you're kind of creating like a fake sun. So the sun looks like it's coming from that side. So let's do something like that. And then let's just increase the span of how that pans out. So that would be all I would probably do to this picture. But after looking at this thing, I'd probably just delete that and then call this the filter. So let's add a preset from this guy and name it, oh, I don't even know how to spell that. It is down here. Oh boy. Because I can't type that on my thing. I wonder if I can, let's see, what if I can copy that? Yeah, I don't know how to do that. So we're gonna just name this create preset A. We name it 3 Hey, that's close. All right. I'll rename that later once I can figure out how to actually copy that. But thank you for spinning. All right, here we go. Lowry says, how do you decide what look a picture needs? That is the one thing about photography that's really nice, because you can decide whatever look you want anything to look like. And that's the best thing about editing, is because that once you have a picture, you can say, what do I want? What's the feel of this image? So for example, this is a water picture. So I'm going to instantly go to the water and change the hue of it. I'm going to change it to something that I like. For example, I think this looks better. Like a dark blue looks better than the original. So you can play around with that, and that's how you get these looks that you want. And it's all about just changing certain parameters around that helps you achieve the desired look that you're going for. That's ultimately how I decide what I want to change and manipulate. So we'll just continue on with this water picture. And then I'm noticing right away that I'm not going to be able to get much detail in the sky because this is a JPEG. Let's see. All right. Change my warmth a little bit and my tint to the right. Let's see. Dehaze it a little bit to get more detail. And sometimes on these, I like to do this graduated filter from the bottom, but instead of a color, I will make it clear. Instead of a color, I will make it no color, and decrease the saturation a little bit and increase the brightness. So then from here, we're getting a really artistic look. And then you can do the same for the top or the exact opposite to create some contrast or dynamic contrast there. I'm also going to come in here and change the color or the hue of that mountain in the background. I just don't feel like it fits, so I'm going to decrease the saturation because I really want that to be like faded. All right, let's punch in on our skin and get some more detail here. So I'm going to dehaze it a tiny bit more, add some clarity. Cool, I like where this is looking. We have some magenta in the clouds, so I'm going to come down here to the saturation and decrease the magenta because I don't want that, or the purple in the clouds. Let's see, and the luminance we can increase or decrease, but as you see, if we punch this up, look at this banding that we're getting. That's because this is a JPEG, so there's not much else I can do to this image, but I may do something with the highlights and split tonings. Let's see, like that, and then something like that. And let's just change this before and after. A little more magenta, decrease that down. Cool. So I like the look of this. This is probably what I would do for the final version of this water picture. Every now and then I will come up here to the tone curve after I'm done and play around with it to get another look or something, but it just kind of depends on what you are trying to do. So I think this one looks good. Awesome, so that is our image. So let me name this preset. Let's see what I'm gonna name this. House M. Create. So there's one more. All right, we'll probably do, let's see, I think that's 6, so I may do a couple more, but if you guys have any questions, let me know in the chat right now, because if not, I'm probably just going to do one more or end the live stream so I can figure out how I'm going to package these. But going through here, you guys sent me so many pictures. Like, there are so many pictures to go through, and like really awesome ones too that you can like play around with, because all of these nature ones, you can really do anything with the hue of all of these leaves and stuff, because you can really change the look of your image to be completely faded. Typically with nature, I like to have dark greens that make everything pop a little bit more, and then isolate your subject. So we can use a radial filter right here and then just change it to the background like that. So then you're isolating your subject inside this nature cascade. Really moody vibes, but that is typically what I'll do for nature stuff. So thank you guys for watching. I'm going to be making these into a preset and then dropping those down below in the description once this video is live. So be sure to double back around and you can download that, and I'll give you an update in the next video. But if you guys don't have any more questions, I'm going to end the live stream here and finish making up this pack and giving it to you for free. As always, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you next time. I'm going to be doing a lot of traveling coming up, so this is why I kind of wanted to get this video out, because I fly out tomorrow to film Daytona Stunt Fest, and I'm so excited about it. But I will try to keep you updated with what's going on here and there because I am so busy. So peace, my friends. I'll see you next time.